Record.
My name is Tom Ryan, and this is Tom Ryan Remembers. And we're going to interview Christina Brown Brazel. She grew up in a lot of places. There she is. She now lives in Anchorage, Alaska, and I'm in Loveland, Colorado. But we're going to put this on YouTube. Tom Ryan Remembers. And Christina, you met Jeff Brazel at Batavia High School, and you became a couple. Now, what attracted you to Jeff? Why did you like Jeff so much?
Well, the day that I met Jeff, he had literally just gotten out of basic training for the Army. I was a freshman in high school, and he joined the Army at 17. And the reason that he joined the Army at 17 was because he wanted to go to college. And he knew that his mother was not going to be able to afford to send him to college. And so he joined the Army to get the GI Bill. And when I first met him, he was a young punk and very confident, and had just gotten out of basic training. Literally, like the day after he got out of basic training is when I met him. And that was what attracted me to him, was the fact that he wanted to go to college and he knew his mom couldn't pay for it. And so he took it into his own hands to go ahead and join the Army so he could get the GI Bill, so he could go to college. And I thought, wow, man, this guy really, really likes his mom, and, you know, he's good to her. And it just kind of went from there. So I was much younger than him, but that was our first meeting. And we did pretty quickly after that become a couple, which was fairly taboo at the time because he was a senior in high school and I was a freshman in high school. And so he was a little bit older than I was. But we decided that we were going to be together, and we have been ever since. So since I was a freshman in high school.
Well, the Army didn't help. They sent him over to Albania or northern Greece in the cauldron of troubles in Europe. And he was a peacekeeper with the United Nations, right?
He was.
He was the United Nations with the blue helmets. And so he was over there and he had to serve out his term. I think that's an awful way to raise money for college. But anyway, that's what he did. And well, did you finish high school in Batavia then?
I did not finish high school in Batavia. I, as you know, moved in with you and Grandma. I believe it was still my freshman year. And Jeff still lived in Batavia. And so I moved to Loveland to live with Grandma and Grandpa. And Jeff decided, instead of to be in the reserves, he wanted to be regular Army. And so he joined the regular Army, and the first thing they did was send him to Germany. And then from there, he was stationed in Macedonia while they were doing the whole Bosnia-Serbia war that was going on over there. And yes, he was a peacekeeper for the UN in Macedonia. And because he was a medic and they were short on medics, he did not get rotated out of the field, and he had to stay in the field for 6 months at a time instead of 6 weeks at a time. Everybody else got rotated out, but the medics had to stay for a longer amount of time than the rest of the guys that were there. The infantrymen and the officers and things got rotated out, but the medical personnel had to stay there longer than the other guys. So yes, it was not
during this time you went to Loveland High School, right?
I went to Loveland High School
in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And living with us, Marilyn and Tom Ryan. And we enjoyed that period very much. But one of the things you had to do in high school was swim. And I thought you were a really good swimmer. You could, when you were like 7 years old, you'd swim down to the bottom of the pool and pick up things off the bottom of the pool and come all the way up. And yet you couldn't pass the swimming test. they had us, in order to graduate from Loveland High School, this was a swimming school. This whole town, they competed in swimming. So they insisted that you had to know how to swim before you could graduate. How did you get around that?
Well, I had to, in Batavia High School in Illinois was different than Loveland High School in Colorado. Whereas in Batavia High School, you had to take gym class all throughout the time that you were there, unless you were taking health class or driver's ed, you had to take physical education. Now, when I got to Loveland, you only needed 1 credit of physical education to graduate. And I was like, well, great, that's perfect. I hate gym, so I'm not going to take gym. But you do have to still pass your swimming test. So I went in and they had me do, the crawl and the backstroke and the dead man's float. And I wasn't able to pass it because I didn't know the strokes, and I wasn't good with the technicality of swimming. Yes, I could swim and I could dive to the bottom of the pool, and I've never had a problem with swimming. It's because you guys taught me when I was young at Dumbarton Oaks, we had a swimming pool, and that's where I learned to swim, that and the Y. But when I got to Loveland High School, I wasn't able to keep my face in the water for 30 seconds, I think is what it was. So I had to do the crawl, and then I had to do the backstroke, and then you had to do the dead man's float. And I couldn't pass the swimming test because I couldn't do 30 seconds of just having my face in the water after doing all those other things. So I failed the swimming test. And so what that meant was I had to take a credit of gym to pass the swimming test. So I had to take the swimming class. So, which was easy for me because I can swim. It just happened to be on that day that I didn't pass the test. It was a one-time thing. You don't pass it, you have to take the swimming class. So that's when I ended up taking the swimming class and ended up passing after that. So you take the class and you pass.
So then one other thing you had trouble was you were a smoker, and they didn't allow smoker cars smoking in the high school. So Chrissy would go across the street, across 29th Street, get off of school property where she was out of the reach of the disciplinarians at the high school, off the property, and you were in a park, city park, and you would smoke over there. And the police came and arrested you for smoking there. Now, how did you ended up, did you ever pay the ticket?
So when I first started going to Loveland High School, there was an actual smoking area on campus that we could all go to. And then I think my sophomore year, they decided we can't smoke on campus anymore. That's no. We're going to start doing away with smoking. And that's when they started taking it out of restaurants and things like that. And they said, you can't let high schoolers smoke on campus. Even though they had been doing it for years and there was an actual smoking section to go smoke in, they took that away from us one year. And so being rebellious teenagers, we decided that, we'll just go off campus. And the residents across the street, 29th Street, started getting irritated because now these kids weren't smoking in the smoking area on campus. They were smoking in front of their houses and throwing their cigarette butts and whatnot. And so the police had to do a crackdown on it to teach us a lesson. And quite a few of us got tickets. Now, we didn't actually get like arrested in handcuffs or anything like that, but we got tickets. And the rule was you had to keep moving. As long as you were moving, walking down the street, kind of like protesting, as long as you're walking down the street, you're okay. But we weren't. And the police pulled up and they knew we weren't. So we started walking, of course, because the police now have pulled up. And they said, yeah, nice try. Here's your ticket for obstructing the sidewalk. So that's what we actually got tickets for, was obstructing the sidewalk. That was what they could get us on. So we went to court.
What did the judge say?
We went to court.
What did the judge say?
Well, we went to court, and it was me and my friends and his parents and you and grandma, and we all came in and we sat in the courtroom and we filled up pretty much the half of the jury box. And he let us sit there through everybody else getting their real tickets, their DUIs and, you know, car theft and this and that and the other. And then at the end, they called us up and said, oh, these are the smoking tickets. And the judge didn't want to deal with it. So what he said was like, don't smoke over there anymore. And we're going to go ahead and dismiss it. Okay, great. So we didn't have to pay a ticket, and we all 6 of us got to leave at the same time because they called us both up at the same time and just let us go on it. And then we just didn't stop walking while we were smoking across. We didn't stop smoking. We stopped standing. And so we never got a ticket for it again, but yeah, that's what happened there.
When you were in high school, you interviewed the ROTC colonel. He was ready to retire, I guess. And you interviewed, why did you interview the ROTC colonel at Loveland
Well,
High
I
School?
worked, we had, instead of school announcements, we had school videos in the morning. So this was cutting edge technology. And I worked for KLHS, which was the videography department of the high school. And we would do video announcements instead of audio announcements. So this was a new awesome thing that HP in town had donated all the equipment so we could start this this new video not conferencing, but you know, we did video announcements. And so we had a whole production team and all the cameras and the videotapes, and we had a whole editing studio. So we would do video announcements to the school on Wednesdays. And so we had a whole news program called KLHS. And so that is how we ended up doing the video announcements. And it was fun, and it was a really fabulous time. And that was one of the interviews that I got to do. I got assigned to the ROTC folks as their representative on KLHS because my boyfriend was in the Army at the time, and he was overseas. And I always wore my Army sweatshirt all the time. And everybody knew who, you know, I was with a guy that was, he lived in Germany and he was off at war and whatnot. So I got assigned to the ROTC team, which was great for me. And I got to do lots of interviews with the kids that were in the program, and the gentleman that ran the program, and they knew who I was. And so I was able to get in and see things that people wouldn't necessarily have seen, their parades and their drills and things like that.
So Jeff was transferred from Yugoslavia, former Yugoslavia, to around to Berlin, Germany. And you wanted to go over and visit him. You graduated from high school, all right. How did you raise the money to fly over to visit Jeff in Germany?
Well, at that time, I still hadn't graduated. And so I was getting ready to go over and see Jeff. And I had not seen him in about 6 months. And I worked at Pizza Hut. And I worked a part-time job at Pizza Hut for years. That's no longer a Pizza Hut in Loveland, Colorado. It's some sort of restaurant, I think, but not a Pizza Hut any longer. But I worked there and I was 17. And so I had not graduated yet, and I got to raise the money. The other thing was Grandma and Grandpa offered to match whatever I could save to go to Germany if I quit smoking. And I did not quit smoking, so I did not get the matched money to go over to Germany. So I went over there with limited funds. But when I got over there, I got to visit Jeff, and we got to go to Holland. So we went to Amsterdam while I was there, and we took a train ride there. He was actually stationed in Schweinfurt, Germany. And, but I did get to see Berlin while I was there. And we saw the Reichstag, which was the Nazi headquarters in Berlin back when there was Nazis still. And they had an artist that came in and had covered the Reichstag in white cloth. And so while I was there, we were very poor. And so he had a friend that had a truck, and we got to travel by car, basically, well, truck, to Berlin, Germany. And we didn't have money for a hotel room. So we literally slept on the lawn of the Reichstag while it was covered in this artist's, rendition of, here's our shame kind of thing, had covered it completely in white cloth. And so I got to see that while it was happening. And then 6 months later, when I got back, they finally did a story, I think in the National Geographic, about this artist having, I was like, oh man, that's where I slept. That's where I was. At the time, I didn't even know what was going on. I didn't know it was an art project. But we got to stay there, and then we slept on the second night that we were there, we slept on the Autobahn, on the median of the Autobahn. We just saw other cars parked there. So we pulled over and just tried to sleep. So we didn't stay in any hotels or anything like that. We didn't have any showers or any of that kind of thing while we were there, but it was a good trip. We got to see Germany and Berlin, and there was a big festival going on at the time. So we had a really good time, but we were young and didn't care about sleeping in the back of a pickup truck. So that was a crazy trip, but we had a really good time. And then and Jeff and I took the train to Amsterdam. So we got to see the whole countryside and the mustard fields, and then stayed in Amsterdam. There we had an actual hotel room. And years later, when I again was living in Loveland, right as I was graduating high school, I took a part-time job up at the Best Western in Estes Park. And I met a gentleman there, and I think his name was Hans or something like that. And come to find out, his parents owned that hotel, the Best Western in Amsterdam. So he's like, oh yeah, I've worked there my whole life. And he was in Estes Park as an exchange student working at the Best Western in Estes Park. And it was, gosh, what a small world. I stayed in your parents' hotel while I was in Amsterdam. He's like, oh yeah, that's that, we own that. So that was kind of an interesting thing that came out of that.
I think you raised money by making beds in the Holiday Inn in Estes Park. And you drive up there and change the beds for the people that were going to come the next day and clean the rooms. You did just about everything, but you got enough money together to join Jeff. But then he got out of the Army, and you graduated from high school, and you decided that you were going to live together. But you went back to Kane County, Illinois. That's where you grew up. And then you came. Yeah. Oh, here's the graduation pictures. How nice.
Well, this is our house in King County, but the first place that we lived when we first got married was Oklahoma. So let me see if I can. Here's our Oklahoma house. So we got married, and immediately moved to Oklahoma because he still had 1 year left in the Army that we had to go to Oklahoma first. So this
Fort
is our
Sill,
first.
Oklahoma.
This, yeah.
Now, Fort Sill had a rule that you had to be married, or else you couldn't live in these married housing.
Right.
The law did not require you to get married, but the Army could require you to be married if you wanted a house. So where did you get married?
We got married in Illinois. So I graduated high school. Jeff came home from the Army. We jet setted it back to Illinois, got married at the Kane County Courthouse, and then we had to get down to Oklahoma. So let me see. I think we have here we go. We got married at the King County Courthouse. Here we are. And this is me and Jeff in the middle, and then Jeff's dad there on the right, and his stepmother Marley on the left. So this is us getting married. And Grandma bought my dress there. And Sue, Jeff's mom, bought my bouquet of flowers. And we went to the courthouse and quickly got married and had a very short celebration. But and then we had to get down to Oklahoma. So I think that is probably.
At Fort Sill, Jeff worked as he was the manager of a swimming pool, I think. He was ready to get out of the Army.
Yeah, he was still an Army medic, and they came in and asked for volunteers and who knows how to swim, and he said, I do. And so they said, okay, you're gonna work at the swimming pool. And so he was a lifeguard at the on post Reinhardt Recreation Center. And so he got to work out his last year as a lifeguard. So I don't know if that's punishment.
How did you end up in Oregon? How did you get to Oregon?
Well, why? After Oklahoma. So this is our Oklahoma house. After Oklahoma, we moved back to Illinois to go to the College of DuPage in Glen Ellen. And so we had an apartment in Wheaton. And this is a picture of our apartment in Wheaton. And this is Jeff on the left, Ryan, and his friend Dave in the middle, who is also very military now. And then Mom on the right. And this was our first apartment in Illinois. So this is after Oklahoma. So we moved there and we went to college for a couple, almost 2 years, looking to get our associate's degree. And Jeff was on the GI Bill. But we decided we didn't like Illinois anymore. And our friend Chris Carlson had moved to Oregon and he said wonderful things about it. And so we said, let's give it a try. So we didn't have very much stuff, a couple posters on the wall, you know, a Coca-Cola thing here, some pictures. So we packed up everything and we moved to Oregon. And so I believe this is, so this is Jeff and I, and this is still in Oklahoma. We still hadn't moved yet. But yeah, the next trip was trying out Oregon. And we were like, oh my gosh, we'd never seen a place so beautiful. So really glad that we did that. And then we moved to Oregon. And so here's a picture of us in Oregon. And this is when you and Grandma had come to visit us. At the time, I was working as a newspaper photographer. And so this is my fancy newspaper photographer vest that I had. I was very proud of that. Later, it turned into my Lone Star vest. I had it logoed up with the Lone Star stuff on it, but this is us when we lived in Oregon the first time. So.
Well, Jeff took some courses in Oregon to learn how to be a computer guy, and they gave him a job, and he learned more on the job than he did in the class, and he used to read manuals. And his fellow students said, you mean you read those little small print, great big thick manuals and sit there reading them? And he said, yeah, I really enjoy reading computer manuals. So he was kind of self-taught himself, like Abraham Lincoln. He became a computer guy. Tech, I guess they call it.
While he was going to school to learn it, they offered him a job that said, you know, come work for us. And he's like, well, this is the job I want to get when I get out of college. What am I still going to college for? I'll take it. So yeah, he went and he worked for Deloitte, and that moved us all over the country. So, you know, we went from there to then 9/11 happened, and he went out and volunteered and helped do some of the rebuilding, because part of their building was smashed during 9/11 because they were literally right next door. So pieces of the plane came through and smashed things up. And so they were looking for volunteers, because anybody who worked there at that point said, I don't want to work here anymore. And Jeff was like, I wasn't there when it happened. I'll come out. So he volunteered and he worked out there for about 6 weeks. And rebuilding the data center out there. And at the end of it, they offered him a job in New York. So we ended up in New York after that. Or New Jersey, we lived in. New
Yes.
Jersey.
Yeah, I know you were in New York when your grandma, Marilyn, died. And then you came out and you had a job there in Maryland. So of course, Jeff was the computer guy, but you had other job, and you came out to Colorado and you spent at least a month with us, and you just left your job. You resigned from your job, and you just put all your time into being with your grandma as she was gradually deteriorating. Anything about that?
Well, that was actually, at that point, we were back living in Illinois, and we had a house in Illinois. And I don't remember where I was working. It must not have been that important, but yes, I did come out and stay for a couple of months. And then when I left, I came back to Illinois. I got a job bartending and at the train station. And that's when I heard that grandma had passed. I remember that's where I was when I learned. But that was long after New York. So after we left New York, we went to California. And then from California, we went to Illinois again. So we don't talk about our California years very much. There wasn't much to remember. We did a lot of working. It was very expensive to live there. And so pretty much what we spent most of our time doing was working. And so we don't have a whole lot of pictures or memories from actual California. But I know this is one picture. This is in Colorado, and I believe this is one of our trips. Either moving to California or moving away from California. But we always stop by in Colorado because it was a good halfway point, and we had family there. We were able to stay. So after California, we moved to Illinois and had our house, and then we moved back to Oregon again. So here's another, I know we've moved all over the place. Here's a picture of Jeff and I with Marie, and I believe this is at Hampstead.
Yes, Marie is Chrissy's. I call her Chrissy because she was with us when she was little. Nobody calls her Chrissy except me, I guess.
Family.
But everybody else calls you Christina. So your name is really Christina. And Marie is your mother in the picture there.
Yep.
So great. Now, that behind you with the moving clouds behind you, that's the Aurora Borealis.
Yes.
And that's in Alaska. You can see the Aurora Borealis. And another name for it is Boreas. And we scattered Marilyn's ashes on Boreas Pass in Colorado, just above Breckenridge, about the time you came back. But you lived in Oregon, and then now you're living in Alaska. I think we ought to cut this off. We talked a lot and covered a lot of territory. You want to do this again?
Yes, absolutely. So we can, we'll go ahead and cut this one off here. Let me stop my screen
Well,
sharing.
show the pictures. Show the pictures to Leanne.
Yes, that's all the ones that I have. I had a little bit of time this morning and we went through a heck of a lot of pictures, but those are the ones that I have.
That's neat. Very
Yes.
nice.
And then there's
A lot of
me.
them I've never seen before. Well, we'll do this again.
Absolutely.
Good.
Sounds great. Let's plan on doing it again next weekend. And thanks everybody for joining us, and have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye.